In this video, I'm going to discuss how to input equations into a Texas Instruments TI-83 Plus, TI-84 Plus, or TI-84 Plus CE graphing calculator. All three models of this calculator have a similar way of inputting equations. The equation that I'm going to begin with is an equation that is a linear equation, and that is y is equal to 2x plus 1. The number 2 in front of the x variable is the slope, and the number plus 1 is the y-intercept. When you turn on your graphing calculator, you'll have a blank display. If you don't, push the clear button. Now, in order to enter an equation into your graphing calculator, you need to identify the y equals button. That is the button used for inputting equations. It is the button at the top leftmost hand position on the keyboard. Push that button. I'm now going to enter in the equation y equals 2x plus 1. I begin by entering the number 2. Next, I'm going to enter the variable. The variable button on the TI graphing calculator is to the immediate right of the alpha button, which on my display is green. I'm going to push that button. It has an X, a T, and a theta symbol. When I push that button, it's entered an X. That's the variable. Now I'm going to push a plus button and then the number 1. I'm now going to push the graph button, and the graph of y equals 2x plus 1 has been displayed. What I want to do is be able to get information from this graph. Let's suppose I want to find the value of y when x equals 4. I could use the trace button. By pushing trace, it's to the immediate left of the graph button, and scroll my little flashing turtle along and try to find the value of y when x equals 4. But almost certainly I'm only going to get an approximate value. The way you deal with this is to use the calc menu. The calc menu is a submenu underneath the trace button. The way you access this is you identify where the second button is on your display. The second button is right above the alpha button. On my display, it is blue. You push the blue second button, and then you push the trace button to access the calc submenu. I want to find a value of y when I enter in a value of x of 4. So I'm going to choose number 1, value, enter a value. It's already highlighted, so I'm just going to push enter. I want to find the value of y when x equals 4. So I've entered 4, I push enter, and I find that when x equals 4, y equals 9. This information is displayed just underneath the graph. Okay, that's useful. What if I have a similar situation, but in this case, I'm given the value of y, and I want to find the value of x. So let's say we want to find the value of x when y equals 7. Well, the way you do this is you enter in the graph of the line y equals 7 and find the intersection point. You see, the graph of y equals 7 will be a horizontal line, because what it means is that for any value of x, y is just always equal to 7. Well, here's how you do it. I push the y equals button, and I'm going to enter a second equation. So I scroll down to y equals y2, and I'm going to go y2 equals 7. Now I graph it. Oh, look at that. The lines intersect. So I'm going to use the intersect function in the calc submenu. Once again, I access that by going second and then pushing the trace button. I can now access the calc submenu, and I'm going to choose function number 5, the intersect function. So I scroll down using the down arrow to select intersect. I could have also simply pushed the 5 button, the number 5, and then pushed enter, and it would do the same thing. So I've highlighted. Now I push enter, and the calculator asks me, Well, is this one of the curves? So I use a right arrow key and I see, yes, my turtle's moving. Sure, that's a curve. And what about the second curve? Well, that's the red one. I push one of the horizontal arrow buttons. Yeah, sure. That's one of the curves I'm dealing with. Push enter. And now I'm instructed to make a guess. So I'm going to bring my flashing turtle over as close to the intersection as I can. You don't have to be right on top of it, but why not get as close as you can? Okay, I'm going to make my guess there. Push enter. And the value y equals 4, x equals 3 at that point of intersection. In your course, you will be graphing many nonlinear equations. An example of such an equation is y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. Let's graph it. To enter the equation y equals x squared minus 6x plus 8, I am going to start with the variable, which is an x, and the variable button, once again, is to the immediate right of the alpha key. And now I need to put an exponent of 2. There are two ways to do this. I can use the x squared button to just put the exponent there. And that's the easiest thing in this case. Or there's another button right above the division button, and it's a little up arrow button, and that means whatever you push after that, make that the exponent. But I'm just going to use the x squared button. So I've got x squared, then I need the minus sign, minus 6x. Notice I did not use the change sign button. That'll give you an error. Only use the change sign button as the on the leading coefficient of the first term. So it's x squared minus 6x plus 8. When I'm going to graph that, there's the graph. Okay, like suppose I want to get some information off this graph. Suppose I want to find the values of x when y equals 0. That's a very common thing you're going to be doing in this course. So I want to find the values of x when y equals 0. Well, that means that that's the point where the graph, the blue graph, is just touching the x-axis. Okay, well, I can do that. But it's kind of tight in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in using the zoom box function like this. So I'm going to push zoom, and zoom box happens to be function number 1. So I'm just going to, it's already highlighted. I select it. Okay, so now I want to make my zoom box. So I've got to anchor my first point. So I'm going to scroll to the right a bit with my flashing turtle. And I'm going to scroll up a bit, so I'm above the x-axis, but notice I'm to the left of the graph. So now I'm going to anchor that as my first point by pushing enter. Now I'm going to use the down arrow button to scroll down below the x-axis and actually below the lowest minimum point of the graph. Now I'm going to use the right arrow button to extend my graph, or my box, I should say, so that the box is visibly to the right of the rightmost point where the graph just touches the x-axis. Now I select enter. There's my zoom box. So now I'm going to use the calc function to actually get that information. Here's how you go about doing that. Well, I'm going to go second calc, which is on the trace button. And this time what I want to find is I want to find a 0, which is number 2 on the menu. So I push finding a 0, hit enter, and I'm asked for a left bound. Well, let's choose the leftmost point to begin with here. So I'm just going to scroll over so that my flashing turtle is above the x-axis and it's to the left of the point that I want to investigate. Okay, well, left bound, sure. Do I want that to be my left bound? Yes. Push enter. I'm asked for a right bound. Use the right hand arrow to scroll to the right on your graph. Now I'm on the negative side of the y-axis, and I'm to the right of the point I'm wanting to investigate. So that's my right bound. I select it by pushing enter. Well, I gotta make a guess. So once again, you don't have to be right on, but I'm going to get as close as I can. And there, I've got my flashing turtle. It looks like it's pretty darn close to where y would be equal to 0. I push enter, and the calculator returns x equals 2, where y equals 0 for that point. I could perform the same operations for the other point on the other side of the minimum on the graph. By the way, on the calc menu, you could find a minimum or a maximum, and you use the same technique. You have a left bound and a right bound, and then you make a guess in the middle. One thing you should do after you've made a graph, you should select the zoom button, which is the middle button, and then select number 6 on the menu, zoom standard. And that returns your graphing calculator to the default window.